Welcome back, everyone. It is Sunday sit-down time. We got the St. Louis Post-Dispatch's Eli Hoff in the house. Eli, we're finally getting a little bit of a lull here. How are you faring after the winter sports?
It's a lot better not having to drive to and from Wichita in a week and after Nashville, so I'm liking it. But the portal keeps us busy for another month or so here.
The portal definitely does, and I would say the women's basketball coaching search and now the finality of it also kept us busy, even on the way to Wichita as well. Tell me what you think. Quick hitters on Kelly Harper. What do you think about this hire for Mizzou as they introduce her tomorrow?
Yeah, this is certainly, I think, about as big a splash as we could have realistically seen from Mizzou in terms of the women's basketball hire. She's a known quantity, has coaching experience at a lot of stops, including Tennessee, which is one of the bigger women's basketball programs out there. It didn't work out for her there, but she was making the NCAA tournament with the Lady Vols, so I think that's a good sign for Missouri. They certainly had to spend a little bit more to get her, but Laird Veach promised that. He said they would be looking to invest more in women's basketball. It looks like that already paid off with hiring Kelly Harper.
Well, the introductory press conference set for tomorrow at 11 a.m. It is open to the public. What do you expect? What do you think Mizzou expects and hope to maybe hear from her in this introductory press conference here?
Yeah, at least what I'll be curious to hear from her is just her perspective on this investment. Is this going to translate to NIL or rev share or just player compensation funding for her? That's part of it. She obviously got a nice salary herself and a lot to spend on her assistants. That's part of it. But what is this going to look like with the players, right? What is she looking for in players for this first season? She's having to go through this process very quickly in terms of get hired, and the next week the portal's open, and she's having to do this. And just how that process is going, right? That's all part of just what this first season is going to be for her. And then also, after she was fired from Tennessee, took a year away from coaching, right? Why did she want to come back? She didn't have to come back if she didn't want to. So those are some of the questions I'll have, but I think Mizzou fans will probably come away very encouraged.
Well, when we talked to Laird Veach before he made this hire, a lot of talk about the investment he wants to make in women's basketball. What do the contract around Kelly Harper kind of tell you about what they're hoping to do with this program? Obviously, NIL going to be a very big part of it as well.
And it will be. It certainly will be. And that's arguably more important than what the coach is getting. But slotting in at just under $1 million a year in salary, she's going to be probably just outside of the top 20 highest paid coaches in the country. But if Mizzou wants to try to be on the fringes of the top 25, be making the NCAA tournament, then that kind of lines up with where they probably need her to be. She was, of course, going to be a little more expensive just having that high major experience in the experience at Tennessee. But it certainly is the type of contract that makes me think Laird Veach was being 100% serious when he talked about this investment.
When you look at all the different stops she's made, obviously the big one is Tennessee, but also been at Missouri State, North Carolina State. What do you like about the kind of wide range, I guess, of experience she seems to have?
You'd assume from her time at Missouri State she's got some familiarity with the state of Missouri and this region from a basketball standpoint. With Tennessee, she's been at a high-profile program and knows how to go after some of those big-time recruits, which is a skill, right? Those are different than a three-star from your neck of the woods. So I think that'll be really important, and it'll also be helpful in evaluating the portal, right? She knows how to evaluate a player who's at the Missouri State level. She knows how to evaluate a player who's at the SEC level. All those things are part of the coaching job right now, and I think she'll be very well prepared for that.
I think it's kind of obvious, but how different is it going to be for her recruiting at Tennessee the last time she recruited to recruiting at a Missouri team that's really trying to rebuild and kind of re-rack this thing?
And that's going to be the challenge for her, right? Yeah. Like playing for the Lady Vols is one of the bigger brands you can play for in college basketball. The Missouri Tigers, this is no offense to anybody there, aren't that, right? Yeah. So it's about creating that brand and turning into that. Now, NIL and money helps. That can make a brand seem a lot more appealing. So maybe that'll help her out, but it's going to be about pitching her vision and understanding that this might not look great year one. It's going to be really difficult to cobble together a roster in the next few weeks and have that be competitive, 9-10 months from now? That's really difficult. So year one, maybe we set the bar sort of low, but I think it'll be up to her to pretty quickly convince recruits that there's something special building here.
I can imagine it was a whirlwind with the transfer portal opening. You saw kind of the international contingent all hit the transfer portal. Who do you think are really the major keys of, before she's introduced tomorrow, we'd like to see these people stay?
I think Grace Slaughter has to be, far and away, Grace Slaughter's in a tier of her own with this. And then you see players like Ashton Judd, maybe Avery Cronkite. Right? There's some players who've been part of this setup for a little while who can contribute there, but Grace Slaughter is one of the better up-and-coming players in the SEC. I think if Kelly Harper was at Tennessee, she would have been trying to keep Grace Slaughter there. In-state product, that helps, so I think she has to be the priority.
Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what do you feel like is a realistic kind of bar, kind of thing that Kelly Harper needs to do in year one that's important for her success here at Mizzou?
and ideally just have it be better,
right,
which just means, you know, maybe you get to 5 or 6 league wins, and maybe that's enough to be in a bubble discussion for the tournament. It's hard to say, but I think getting there, getting some young players who could have some continuity going forward, and then hitting the recruiting trail strong, right? Just laying down a foundation that then can make year 2 a year where maybe they're pushing for the NCAA tournament. It can make year 3 where they're certainly getting to that level. Now, seeing how Dennis Gates' first year went, we shouldn't rule out the NCAA tournament, right? Mizzou's not going to be mad if they overachieve in the first year under Kelly Harper. But I think if this is going to be something for the long haul, it's more about establishing that foundation, and that starts with just general improvements from last year.
Well, it's also the first hire for Laird Veach, so this is a big moment for him as well. You know, how big is a first hire and kind of setting the tone of your time as an athletic director?
I think it's really big, especially because he's obviously gotten some money to throw around in this, right? The ability to invest, which is big for him, that he was able to go and pitch administration on, hey, I want to invest more in women's basketball, and they gave him the funds to do that. Now, it has to work out. That's part of it, but it's going to be a long time before we can have that referendum. So I'm sure he's very excited to get this across the line. I'm sure he's very excited to have gotten someone who's so high up his list, right? I think all those things, you know, maybe not a victory lap for him, but he might be giving himself a little pat on the back.
We will see him tomorrow. We'll also get to meet Kelly Harper tomorrow. In the meantime, Eli, I appreciate you making the time.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
The rest of you guys will be right back after the break.